Rain continued through the night, washing the city in silver sheets. The sound of it pressed against the studio windows like a memory that refused to fade. The thunder had moved on, but the quiet that followed held its own weight. Thick, full, alive. Scarlet stood in the center of the studio long after Luca left. The room was still. Too still. Every dancer knew the moment after a performance. The silence where the world doesn't quite know what you're becoming. That was this moment. Not victory. Not defeat. Transformation. Caleb watched her from a few steps behind, arms loose at his sides, not attempting to reach for her. He knew what stillness was. He knew what it meant to let someone feel their own heartbeat before pressing the world back into motion. Daniel leaned against the upstairs railing, eyes narrowed. Not at Scarlet, but at the door Luca had disappeared through. His mind was already a machine of strategy. Gears turning, lines drawing, battles forming. But even he didn't speak. Scarlet breathed in, lowly. And then she said, "We begin now." Caleb stepped forward, not to lead but to join. Daniel came down the steps, no hesitation. Scarlet turned to them, not as someone who needed support, but as someone who was ready. "Tomorrow," she said, "we open the doors. We start training. We build new dancers. We build new futures." Caleb nodded once. "And Luca?" Daniel asked quietly. Scarlet met his eyes. "He will fight in the light now. Not from the shadows." He paused. "And we won't hide either." Daniel's mouth tightened. "Not fear, calculation. Then we hit first." Scarlet shook her head. "No." Daniel blinked, surprised. "We don't destroy him," Scarlet said softly. "We expose him. Let truth undo him. Not revenge." Daniel stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, something in him shifted. Respect deepened. Not because she chose mercy, but because she chose strategy without hatred. Caleb exhaled softly behind her. "You don't want to become him," he said. Scarlet didn't have to answer. They all knew. Upstairs, Liam slept curled beneath a soft gray blanket, unaware of storms or battles or histories that could break adults into glass. Scarlet checked on him. She brushed the back of her fingers gently across his hair, careful not to wake him. She envied his peace, not because it was simple, but because it was earned without price. His breathing was steady. She watched him and whispered to herself, "He grows in a world better than the one I came from." She would make sure of that, no matter what came next. He turned. Caleb was waiting in the doorway. Not intruding, not asking, simply there. "I didn't want him to see any of it," she murmured. "He didn't," Caleb said. "He saw strength." Scarlet's throat tightened. Not from tears. From relief. Downstairs, Daniel sat at the long desk that had once belonged to Luca. The surface was polished, reflecting the faint glow of the lamps. On it sat the folder. Evidence. He tapped his fingers once, controlled. His jaw clenched a fraction. Courtney's words still echoed in his mind. "He's going to destroy you." Daniel did not believe in fear. But he knew patterns. And he knew Luca. Luca did not strike openly. He struck by dismantling infrastructure, support, reputation, and then spirit. And Luca still believed Scarlet was tied to him emotionally. He did not understand that letting go had already happened. Daniel closed the folder. Not to hide it. To save it for the moment it would matter most. Scarlet returned to the main studio floor. The rain had slowed to a whisper outside. The building hummed softly. Pipes, air vents, the low murmur of a living space breathing through night. Caleb stood before her. For a moment neither spoke. Then Caleb stepped closer, slow, steady. Scarlet watched him approach without stepping back. He stopped close enough for her to feel his warmth. No urgency, no claim, no demand, just presence. His voice was quiet. "When he attacked you before, you were alone." Scarlet's breath deepened, but she didn't look away. Caleb continued, slow, precise. "You are not alone now." Scarlet felt the truth of it ripple through her. Not as comfort, Fact. She reached out, not for his hand but for his face. Her palm rested against his cheek, warm, rough, real. Caleb's breath stilled. Scarlet whispered, "Thank you." Caleb didn't move. Not to pull her closer. Not to hold her. Not to turn the moment into something it wasn't yet. He simply placed his hand over hers. Wow. Silent. Solid. Unbreakable. Then he stepped back. Not away but to give her space to breathe. Because love is not possession. And Caleb had learned that the hard way long before her. The studio lights dimmed. The city outside softened into sleep. But Scarlet did not sleep. She stood at the windows, watching reflections move across the glass. Her reflection no longer looked like a ghost, or a survivor, or a broken memory. She looked like a storm that had finally learned how to stand still. Not to suppress power. To wield it. Behind her her studio, felt alive. Alive with tomorrow. With dancers not yet arrived. With laughter not yet heard. With history being rewritten in real time. Scarlet whispered into the quiet. This is only the beginning. And somewhere across the city, Luca's glass shattered against a wall. 'Cause he could feel it too. He had not lost once. He had begun to lose forever. Morning broke over Brighton City with a quiet kind of brightness, the type that didn't demand attention but hinted that something had shifted. Something subtle, something living. Scarlet woke before the sun had fully risen. The air cool around her, the studio still. She stretched slowly, letting her body adjust. For the first time in a long time, she did not wake with dread or weight pressing her chest. There was clarity now. Destination. Direction. She wasn't running anymore. She was walking forward. She dressed in simple leggings and a soft black tank top, tying her hair into a neat knot at the crown of her head. The hardwood floor under her feet was warm from the night's soft heat. She breathed in. The studio smelled faintly of cedar polish and something floral. Caleb's quiet doing. He had insisted on bringing fresh arrangements into the space each week without fanfare. At the center of the dance floor, she stood tall and closed her eyes. The silence held her. Then she began to move. No music, no count, no choreography. Just her. Her breath guided her. Her spine curved, her arm extended, her weight shifted with grace and memory. The version of Scarlet that had once belonged on the highest platforms of law, of education, of lineage, of legacy. Her body, even with years of exhaustion and struggle, remembered. She wasn't performing. She was reclaiming space. And she moved like someone who knew pain intimately, but had learned that survival could be beautiful. Stairs. Caleb stood at the rail watching. He had woken early too, but not by accident. He had grown accustomed to waking for Liam's whispers at dawn, but Liam was still asleep, curled sideways with his hair a soft mess. But Caleb hadn't come down for his son. He came because Scarlet danced. Her movements were quiet strength. Unforced. Unpretending. A woman rediscovering herself piece by piece. Not for anyone else's gaze but her own. He didn't interrupt. He didn't call her name. He simply stood, letting her have the entire room, the entire morning, the entire world. For once in his life, Caleb Wright, man who commanded boardrooms, who could halt industries with a single phone call, was grateful simply to witness. And it humbled him. When Scarlet finished, her breathing was light, her pulse steady. She didn't turn toward him. She knew he was there. She had known the whole time. "You've been watching me for the past 10 minutes, she said softly. Caleb smiled. 15, he corrected. She shook her head, laughter rising warm beneath her ribs. He came down the stairs, movement deliberate, unhurried. When he reached her, he did not reach out. He mirrored her earlier gentleness. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning." She hesitated. There were many words she could say. Many questions she could ask. But none felt right yet. Caleb sensed it. He nodded once. "Breakfast?" he asked. Scarlet smiled. "Only if Liam picks the place." As if summoned by name, A sleepy voice echoed from above. Pancakes. Scarlet tipped her head back to laugh. Caleb sighed. He heard us. He always does, Scarlet said. And there was something about that, a child's presence knitting their mornings together, that made the world feel less sharp. They went to a small cafe tucked away behind an ivy-covered wall, one of those hidden places that didn't exist on travel blogs or city directories. Tables were painted old sage green, each one unique, mismatched but charming. Vines hung overhead, creating pockets of shade and soft light. Liam sat between Scarlet and Caleb, which Scarlet suspected might have been planned by the miniature strategist himself. He kicked his little feet and announced to the waiter, I want pancakes shaped like hearts. And what shape should mine be? Scarlet asked. A crown, Liam replied instantly, as if this were obvious. Caleb raised a brow. And mine? A potato, Liam said without hesitation. Scarlet nearly choked trying to hide her laugh. Caleb stared at his son. A potato? Yes, Liam said, nodding sagely. Strong, reliable, round. Scarlet covered her mouth. Tears formed in her eyes. Caleb closed his eyes in long-suffering silence. The waiter coughed to disguise a laugh before bowing and hurrying away. The morning unfolded in warm laughter and small, gentle touches of conversation. Scarlet forgot for a moment the world outside. But the world had not forgotten her. Meanwhile, across the city, a glass door swung open at Luca's office. Sir, it's on the news, his assistant said, breathless. Luca did not look up from his drink. His tie was loose. His shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. Rage had not lessened, only simmered into something sharper. What is? The assistant swallowed. The studio. A launch. Her press release went out this morning. Luca froze. What press release? The assistant passed him a tablet. Barnes Dance Foundation to open scholarship studio for underprivileged youth. Scarlet Barnes. Name. Her family name. Used again. Publicly. Luca felt the cold rush down his spine. She used the Barnes title, he whispered. The assistant nodded. Yes, sir. Legally, she never relinquished it. Luca's jaw tightened. And the funding, he demanded. It seems. The assistant hesitated. The right family is backing it. Luca's drink glass shattered in his hand. Back at the cafe, Scarlet's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Daniel. She stepped aside to answer. Tell me, she said quietly. Daniel's voice was steady. Luca knows. Scarlet closed her eyes for half a breath. Let him, she replied. Scarlet, he'll retaliate. I know. And we're ready. She looked to the table where Caleb tried and failed to negotiate with Liam about acceptable pancake syrup ratios. Her chest softened. Yes, she said. We are. Daniel exhaled on the line. A sound of trust. I'll prepare the documents. And Scarlet. The reporter wants your first public interview. Scarlet froze. Her image, her voice, her story. Her silence had always been her shield. But shields were for people still protecting wounds. Scarlet wasn't hiding anymore. She opened her eyes. I'll do it, she said. When she returned to the table, Caleb's gaze lifted to her. He had heard enough from her expression alone. It begins today, he said. Scarlet nodded. It does. Caleb leaned back in his seat. His voice quiet but certain. Then we walked together. Not an offer. A statement. Scarlet didn't answer with words. She didn't need to. She simply laid her hand on the table next to his. Not touching. Just near. Close enough for understanding. Caleb's fingers shifted, slow, allowing her space to move away if she chose. Scarlet did not move away. She let their hands touch. Lightly. Warm. Steady. Liam, without looking up from his pancakes, announced to the table. I knew it. She's going to be my mom. Scarlet nearly inhaled her coffee the wrong way. Caleb choked on air. Liam calmly continued eating. As predicted. But across the city, another storm gathered. Courtney stood at a marble bar, staring into her reflection, one she no longer recognized. She lifted her phone. When Luca answered, his voice was low. Dark. Come. What do you want? Courtney swallowed hard. You said you wanted to destroy her. I know how. Luca's voice sharpened. I'm listening. Courtney closed her eyes and stepped over a line she could never return from. Morning broke with a soft gold hue, brushing the studio windows in warmth. The rain had washed the city clean, but the air still held a quiet chill, the kind that always came right before something important. Scarlet stood alone in the mirrored room, her reflection steady, calm, focused. Today was the first day the studio doors would open. Not for rehearsals. Not for performances. For new beginnings. Her hair was pulled back, her feet bare on the polished floor, the sunlight catching the faint shimmer in her eyes. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't uncertain. She was ready. The door behind her opened slowly. Caleb stepped inside. Not rushed, not loud. A quiet presence that filled the room without taking from it. You slept? He asked gently. Scarlet gave a small, amused breath. Not much. Caleb nodded. He hadn't either. She turned to face him fully. Are you ready? She asked. Caleb's jaw eased, his eyes warm. I've been ready since the first time I saw you choose to stand again. Scarlet didn't respond with words. She only held his gaze long enough to let him know she heard him. Then Daniel walked in. Sharp suit. Focused eyes. Phone in hand. Strategy in motion. He didn't waste time. We have 28 applicants, he said, placing a folder on the piano. Mostly young dancers. Some of them are fresh. Some of them are lost. Some of them are desperate. Scarlet softened. The desperate ones are the ones I understand. Daniel nodded. Then teach them what you learned. Scarlet exhaled, hope touching her voice like a flame catching dry wood. I will. Later the studio doors opened. One by one dancers came in. Shy. Some rigid. Some wide-eyed, seeing the studio like it was sacred ground. Scarlet greeted each of them, not as a teacher above them, but as someone who had once been them. A girl with trembling hands. A boy who hid a bruise beneath his collar. A young woman whose eyes flicked constantly toward the door, as if expecting someone to drag her back. Scarlet didn't ask their stories. She saw them. And they saw her. Caleb demonstrated stretches. His movements gentle but precise. Dancers mirrored him with curious awe. He didn't teach like a dancer who had mastered everything, but like someone who remembered what it was to learn. Daniel moved quietly at the edges, adjusting schedules, managing forms, checking light settings, keeping the world running so Scarlet wouldn't have to. For the first time, the studio breathed as a team. Scarlet watched the dancers move, faltering but trying, uncertain but present, and something warm swelled in her chest. This was not Luca's world. This was hers. But outside the glass doors someone watched. Courtney. Her arms folded, expression unreadable, rain still clinging to her coat. She had not come inside, not yet. Daniel noticed her first. He approached the door, opening it just enough. Are you here to spy? He asked quietly. Or to decide who you are without him? Courtney looked past him, to Scarlet. She didn't answer for a long moment. Then, voice low, almost fragile. She looks happy. Daniel didn't soften. But he didn't harden either. She's free. Courtney's throat tightened. Do you think I ever will be? Daniel held her gaze, and answered with truth, not comfort. That depends on whether you open the door. Courtney's breath shook. The decision hung between worlds. She stepped inside. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just a step. And sometimes that is everything. Scarlet saw her. Their eyes met across the studio floor. No hatred. No fire. No old wounds tearing open. Just two women who had both survived the same storm. Scarlet didn't speak. She just nodded once. An invitation. Courtney's breath broke softly. Relief, heartbreak, disbelief, before she sat quietly on the bench at the wall, watching, learning how to breathe again. Hours later, when the dancers left and the sun dipped lower behind the city skyline, Scarlet stood at the windows once more. Her reflection was different now. Not a survivor. Not a fighter. Builder. Caleb approached, slow and steady. "This felt right," he said quietly. Scarlet nodded. It did. Daniel joined them, leaning against the window frame. "This is how it begins. Not with a fight. With foundation." Scarlet let the words settle. Then she said something none of them expected, but all of them somehow knew was coming. "It's time to expose Luca." Caleb exhaled. Daniel straightened. Courtney, from the bench, closed her eyes. Scarlet continued. Not angry, just resolute. "We don't destroy him. We reveal him. We let truth be the blade." Caleb nodded slowly. "And we stand together." Scarlet looked at each of them. Caleb, Daniel, Courtney, and for the first time, felt like a family. Real one. Not bound by blood. Bound by choice. The city lights flickered on outside. Night returned. But this time, Scarlet was not afraid of it. The night did not come to swallow her anymore. Came to witness. Night arrived quietly. The studio lights dimmed. The dancers had gone home, tired but shining. It was the kind of exhaustion that came from effort, not defeat. From trying, not breaking. Scarlet stood on the balcony, overlooking the city. Warm light from inside brushed her silhouette. The evening breeze carried the scent of rain-washed concrete and jasmine from the street vendor below. Caleb joined her, leaning against the railing. Not too close, not too far. They didn't need words to fill silence. Silence itself had become safe. After a moment, Scarlet spoke. "Luca is panicking." Caleb didn't ask how she knew. "People like him only hold power when no one questions them," she said. "As soon as there is another world to choose, another place to belong, they begin to lose." Caleb nodded. "He can't understand love. Only control." Scarlet's fingers tightened slightly on the railing. "I used to think I was weak for being controlled," she murmured. "But the truth is, he used my loyalty, not my fear." Caleb turned his head, watching her with quiet certainty. "Loyalty is not weakness, Scarlet. Giving it to the wrong person just teaches you how to give it to the right ones now." Scarlet breathed in sharply, not from pain, from understanding. Then footsteps sounded from behind them. Daniel. He held his phone loosely, but his eyes were sharper than usual. "We have movement," he said. Scarlet straightened. "Luca." Daniel nodded. "He contacted 2 of the dancers who left yesterday. He's offering scholarships, promises, attention, lies." Caleb's jaw tightened. "He's trying to starve us before we grow." Scarlet's gaze didn't waver. "He's trying to keep control of the story." Daniel placed the phone on the balcony table. "We can stop him." Scarlet shook her head. "No. We outshine him." Caleb looked at her, steady. "Then what's the first move?" Scarlet turned and walked back inside, the 3 of them following her to the heart of the studio floor. Courtney was there, sitting cross-legged on the polished wood, quiet, hands resting in her lap. She rose slowly when they entered. Her eyes were different now. No mascara streaks, no trembling, no brittle sharpness. Just tired truth. "I can help," Courtney said. Scarlet approached her, step soft. "Only if it's your choice." Courtney nodded. "He has a file," she said, voice barely above air. "Names, messages, proof of everything he's done. The things that never reached the board. The girls who left before they ever had a chance to speak." Silence fell. Not the kind that suffocates. The kind that changes things. Caleb's voice was low. "Where?" Courtney swallowed. "At the penthouse. Locked drawer. Behind the framed photo of his father." Daniel already had his car keys out. "No," Scarlet said. They all turned to her. We don't break in. We don't steal. We don't hunt in the dark. Her voice was steady, strong but gentle. We prove we are not him. Courtney looked at her as if seeing something impossible. How? She whispered. Scarlet lifted her chin. We make the studio undeniable. Full. Strong. Visible. We build so loudly the world cannot ignore it. Daniel's eyes flickered. You want to win by making hope louder than him. Scarlet met his gaze without hesitation. Yes. Caleb smiled, not with his mouth but with something behind his eyes. It was the first time Daniel had seen hope in a form he could respect. I'll schedule a showcase, Daniel said. Public. Open invitation. Press included. Caleb nodded. I'll train the dancers harder and kinder than they've ever known. Courtney exhaled shakily. And I'll speak. When the moment comes. I'll tell the truth. Scarlet stepped close. You don't have to stand alone when you do. Courtney's voice broke like light through water. I know. The studio lights flickered softly, warming the room with a golden glow. 3 hands touched the center of the floor. Scarlet, Caleb, Daniel. Courtney joined them. Not as an apology. As a beginning. For people once shaped by one man. No longer shaped by him. But by each other. Scarlet closed her eyes and whispered. Let the world watch us rise. Across the city, Luca stood in a penthouse of glass and silence. He poured himself a drink. The ice clinked once. And for the first time, his hand trembled. Not because he had lost power, but because he had lost control. And the one thing Luca Micheli feared above all else was a woman who no longer feared him. The next morning rose with a clear sky, blue and wide, as if the world itself had decided to begin again. Scarlet arrived early. The studio was quiet, sunlight spilling across the smooth floorboards, turning them into warm honey. She stood in the center, grounding herself, the familiar scent of rosin and polished wood filling her lungs. She closed her eyes, not to escape but to arrive. The door opened softly. Caleb. He didn't speak. He simply stretched beside her. Their movements fell into rhythm without instruction, shoulders rolling, breath sinking, bodies remembering. Daniel entered next, carrying a board of schedules and showcase layout plans. He was precise, efficient, yet something in him had eased. He no longer moved like a man preparing for war. He moved like a man building something worth defending. Courtney arrived last. Not in heels. Not with styled hair. Not wearing expectation. Just a soft sweater, ballet flats, and quiet eyes that had finally stopped flickering in fear. Scarlet welcomed her with a nod. Not pity, not forgiveness. Respect. Courtney took her place beside the others. Complete circle. Then the dancers began to arrive. They filled the room with nervous laughter, whispered encouragement, shy excitement. Some brought snacks. Some brought notebooks. Some brought nothing but their trembling hearts. Scarlet clapped once, gentle but clear. Welcome, she said, her voice warm. Today we begin preparing for the showcase. A murmur of surprise rippled through the group. One of the youngest girls, Amina, raised her hand timidly. We're performing. For real. Scarlet smiled. For real. A shock of hope flickered across faces. Hope was the rarest currency in the world, and Scarlet had just given it freely. Caleb stepped forward. We'll train hard, he said. But not to impress anyone. We train to tell the truth with our bodies. Your truth. Your story. Your breath. His voice was steady, like a drumbeat dancers could trust. Daniel spoke next, holding the clipboard loosely. The showcase is open to the public. Free entry. They can come to judge or to listen or to learn. It doesn't matter. The story will speak for itself. Courtney watched the dancers, her hands tightening slightly. She knew this was the part Luca feared. The moment people believed in something else. Rehearsal began. Music played, soft at first, then rising. Feet moved. Bodies reached. Mistakes happened, but no one flinched. Because in this studio, mistakes were part of becoming. Scarlet moved among them, adjusting posture, breathing with them, encouraging gently. She didn't demand obedience. She invited expression. Caleb demonstrated turns. Daniel corrected spacing on the floor. Courtney watched quietly, absorbing everything, the freedom, the trust, the difference. She whispered to Scarlet when they stood side by side. "They look alive." Scarlet answered softly. "They are." Afternoon sunlight warmed the studio. Sweat beaded across foreheads. Breath came heavy but happy. The floor hummed with movement. The door opened. Everyone paused. A shadow crossed the threshold. Luca. No grand entrance. No storm. Just a man stepping inside as though he still belonged in every room he walked into. The air tightened. But Scarlet did not move. She did not flinch. She did not look away. Caleb stepped forward, not aggressively, just enough to be the line between then and now. Daniel stood fully upright, one hand slipping into his coat pocket, not for a weapon but for readiness. Courtney's breath stopped. Luca looked around the room slowly, gaze calculating, cold, until it landed on Scarlet. "So this is your new project," he said. Scarlet didn't respond. She simply held his gaze. Luca smirked slightly. "These dancers are nothing. Not trained. Not refined. You left excellence to play caretaker." Scarlet stepped forward. Just one step. The studio felt the shift. "My dancers are not objects," she said. "They don't have to earn the right to exist. They only have to be. And that makes them more powerful than you will ever understand." Luca's jaw tightened. "This belongs to me. You belong." "Stop." Scarlet said it quietly, but it struck like thunder. "I don't belong to you," she said. "I never did. Not even when I didn't know it." Luca opened his mouth. And Courtney, voice breaking but clear, spoke. "You don't own any of us." Luca froze, because he recognized the tone. The voice of someone who once feared him, and no longer did. He stepped back. Not enough to retreat, just enough to react. Caleb didn't move. Daniel didn't blink. Scarlet didn't break eye contact. Luca's composure wavered, just a crack. "I will ruin you," he whispered. Scarlet's answer was calm, almost gentle. "You already lost." Silence. Not tension. Truth. Luca's eyes flickered with something unfamiliar. Fear. Real fear. He left. Not with the slam of a door, but with the quiet of someone who has no ground left to stand on. The dancers stared. Scarlet turned back to them, voice steady. "Where were we?" And just like that, rehearsal continued. The music rose. Bodies moved. Hope took root deeper than before. And for the first time in years, Scarlet wasn't surviving. She was leading. The studio did not return to normal after Luca left. Not at first. The dancers moved, yes. The music resumed. But there was a tremor in the air. A pulse beneath the floorboards, a reminder that they were not just learning dance anymore. They were learning how to stand. Scarlet watched them. Amina's turns grew more certain. Nico's lines stretched wider, cleaner. Jada's breath synced with the music instead of fighting it. They were changing. Not into dancers Luca would approve of, but into dancers who told the truth with their bodies. Scarlet felt something swell in her chest. Not pride. Recognition. She knew what it looked like to rise after you've been held down. Caleb called a break, and the dancers collapsed to the floor, laughing through exhaustion. Daniel passed out water bottles like it was a ceremony. Courtney sat with them, answering quiet questions about choreography and technique. Not as a teacher. As a survivor who was finally learning how to speak. Scarlet stepped outside for a moment, letting the brisk air clear her lungs. Only then did she allow herself to shake. Just once. Not from fear. From release. Luca was gone. Not defeated. Not finished. But gone. And that was enough for today. Later that evening, when the dancers had filed out one by one, leaving sweaty handprints on the studio doors and soft laughter echoing down the street. Scarlet, Caleb, Daniel, and Courtney gathered around the center mat. The air was quiet, warm. Daniel placed the showcase plan on the floor. "We need a piece for the closing performance," he said. "Something that says everything without us having to say anything." Courtney nodded slowly. "A story told by movement." Caleb leaned back on his hands. "Scarlet should choreograph it." Scarlet shook her head. "No. We choreograph it together." Daniel blinked. "Together?" Scarlet looked at each of them carefully. "Yes. Because this story was never just mine." Courtney's breath hitched, but this time not from fear. From being seen. Caleb smiled, small, soft, real. Daniel didn't smile, but his shoulders eased in a way that meant the same thing. Scarlet continued. "It begins in stillness. One dancer, center." She lifted her palm slightly. "Then the others enter one by one, not to rescue her, to join her, to witness her, until she is no longer standing alone." Courtney closed her eyes. Tears slipped down quietly. Not fragile tears. Not broken tears. Releasing tears. Daniel's voice was low. "That's not just choreography." Scarlet met his eyes. "No. It's truth." They began that night. No music at first. Only breathing. Scarlet stepped into position, center of the floor, bare feet grounded firmly. She didn't perform. She didn't pretend. She remembered. The night she realized she was trapped. The night she left. The night she thought she would break. Her body moved, not beautifully, honestly. Caleb followed, not leading her, not supporting her, mirroring the rhythm of survival. Daniel watched, memorizing structure, counting beats, not to control but to keep time so that healing had shape. Courtney moved last, hesitant at first, then freer as the echoes of who she had been began to fall away. It was not polished. It was not elegant, but it was real, breath to breath, step to step, memory to release. And as they finished, standing together, shoulders aligned, breaths unified, the studio felt holy, not religious, sacred. Scarlet looked around at them, her people, her family, not by blood, but by survival and choice and rebuilding. "We'll teach it tomorrow," she said. There was no debate, only understanding. Outside, across the city, far above street level, Luca sat in his penthouse, staring at the skyline. Less, ill, but no heartbeat in the room. No one to command. No one to control. No one orbiting him anymore. His empire had never been built on love. Only gravity. And gravity only works when people don't learn to fly. His phone buzzed. He didn't answer. He knew who it was. The first dancer who had left him for Scarlet's studio was speaking. And soon, others would follow. Not because Scarlet stole them, but because freedom spreads quietly and fast. Luca's reflection shimmered in the glass. A man surrounded by everything, with nothing left that could hold him up. His jaw clenched, his fingers curled. This was not over, but for the first time, he wasn't certain he would win. Back in the studio, Scarlet turned off the lights. Warm darkness filled the room. And for the first time in her life, she did not fear the dark. She owned it.